I learned to even appreciate sports of that I didn't work, right? I would watch baseball umpires and just was amazed at how they would rotate around the base based on where the ball was coming from, right? But to get yourself in the proper position 1-2 seconds ahead of the play in a game, a second or two that you can win is eternity. It's eternity because you're so uber focused and just watching officials navigate that. I've watched so many hockey games live, which is when you really learn to appreciate hockey officials.
Oof.
Quite honestly, to me, Dana, hats off. No way could I couldn't skate alone. Skate backward, right? Wow. A lot of really great athletes are flying by you, and there's a puck in the air somewhere around here.
Somewhere.
Yeah, I felt like my sports were rather safe overall once I watched the hockey officials, but just the
Oof.
appreciation for that. You're always going to have those ups and downs in scenarios, and I think when I would struggle, I don't know that it was like a pocket of time. I would struggle if I knew that I lost my focus during a contest and then that lapse uh, created a situation that affected the game adversely. It may not be a game-changing play. As a matter of fact, I think as you climb the ladder, you become a little more focused and self-critical on even plays that no one really knows you missed, but you know you missed them, right? So um, there was that as far as kind of like that challenging piece. I think anytime for me, I think officiating is you becoming someone who becomes interested at first. If you're really, really lucky, you join the local chapter in your community and you learn and you meet individuals in that community who have been there, who mentor, that live in your community. You start learning how to do this, or at least start to get a feel for it. Then you become an extremely active member of that fraternity. And then you start to become a mentor to that next generation that comes through. And then when you decide to hang the spikes up or the shirts up, um, for me, it wasn't a full circle yet. And supervising allowed me to be able to close that circle even as I ref. But then when I decided to retire, uh, the fraternity is a wonderful fraternity because it opens the doors for officials to give back constantly.
And now, Season 2, Episode 32, Letter Z, Zebra. Join host Dana Pappas with special guest Gene Steratore on the From A to Zebra podcast.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas. Unfortunately, my awesome co-host Nate Acosta can't be with us today. He sends his regards. He wishes he could be here. He's got some bigger fish to fry today, which we completely understand. It's really hard to believe that this is the final episode of Season 2 of the show, with this being our 59th episode overall. So for this season, we've made it all the way through the alphabet. We've thrown in a couple of special episodes, and now we're on our final letter, getting ready to cover the letter Z and the word zebra, which is our closing theme each year. Our guest today is someone who is a fitting closer to the season and is certainly an appropriate person to talk about the importance of wearing the stripes and being one of those zebras. Our guest officiated football in the NCAA ranks for 15 years before being hired as an NFL official in 2003. He worked in the league from 2003 to 2018, first as a field judge, and was later promoted to the referee position in 2006. He was the alternate referee for Super Bowl 44 in 2010 and the referee for Super Bowl 52 in 2018, which was actually his final game in the NFL. And on top of all that, because he didn't have enough to do, he was also a high-level NCAA Division I basketball referee from 1997 to 2018. Since the fall of 2018, he has served as a rules analyst for CBS Sports for the NFL, college football, college basketball, and of course, if you're a college basketball fan, you see him during March Madness. With that resume and knowing what I know about this individual, we're excited to introduce and welcome our guest for today's episode, Gene Steratore. Gene, thank you so much for joining us on the From A to Zebra podcast.
Dana, thank you so much for having me. It's a sheer joy. It's great to see you again. And
Nice to see you.
time is too far between, but it's great to be with you.
It really is. I think the last time I saw you, we were at one of the Final Fours and you walked past us and we were yelling at you and waving and it was crazy. I think it might have been in New Orleans. That was probably the last time I saw you in person. It was from afar, but we were cheering for you. So, you got, as referees, you have to have one or two fans at least, and you had two that day. So it was good.
That's right.
So, Gene, we're going to kind of jump right in. You were, as I mentioned, a high-level official in two sports, working NCAA Division I men's basketball, and then, of course, working as an official in the NFL. Could you tell us about your journey in both sports? How did you get started? What were your steps along the way? And how did you get to where you are now as an on-air rules analyst?
Well, you know what, Dana? In my home, officiating was something, believe it or not, we were kind of born into. My late father worked 30 plus years of Division I college basketball and Division I college football. So we had the pleasure really to kind of dress up as referees for Halloween once a year, and being one of seven brothers and sisters and children in that family, somebody was a referee every Halloween. So we kind of thought it was a normal uniform to wear, which was great. And I think really honestly, participating in sports my whole youth. I went to college and played football, but I was a three-sport athlete in high school and loved the games and loved what the games meant, really from an athletic standpoint, but also I was introduced to kind of what the game meant from an officiating window because it lived in the home. And my father also was an assigner of officials in small college basketball and football too. So I not only got to live kind of watching my dad referee, just an amazing. His resume is much greater than mine, honestly, and then also to be home and hear my dad, because back in those days there were no cell phones. You did have the phone with a cord attached to it. It was a long cord when the sisters wanted to talk to somebody, but a cord nonetheless. And I remember hearing from another room, maybe conversations he would be having with coaches, right? After games, things of that nature. So I really was kind of born into the entire circle of what officiating sports meant as it interfaced with that. And at 13 years old, I went to the YMCA and they were playing fifth grade basketball or fourth grade basketball. And they needed an official. So I put a whistle in my mouth. And quite honestly, I think that was the hook that was in my mouth from that day onward. So that progression, which you hope almost all officials take, was the normal progression, right? And it went through the high school ranks into some small college opportunities. Uh, and then it furthered itself, and each step of the way was kind of just like the first one. It just, it changed in the level of athletes naturally, and then the level of detail and intricacies of the game. And that is what continues to intrigue me about it to this day.
That's great. And, we talk so much about getting that bug as an official, and it sounds like you didn't just get the bug, you were born with it. So that's not always the case. So I think that's so special when you have a parent that was an official at the high level, because what a great role model to have. And we'll get into mentorship here in a little bit, which when you have one in your own house, that's definitely something special. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, with the rigors of working one sport at the college or professional levels, can you tell us about the challenges of working two sports at those levels at the same time?
Well, navigating travel was challenging,
I would imagine.
right? Making sure that you had the right stuff in the officiating bag, because officials that do travel through the air never check their luggage, because you can't land and have your luggage not be there if there's a game that night. So you always had that. But from the officiating direct window to it, I think what it really was it was a challenge to know that you may work 2, 3, 4 basketball games during the weekday, especially when they overlapped for those 5 or 6 weeks, and then an NFL football game that weekend. So the demand was, in order to do this and do what was right for the game, a level of preparation during the regular day, while whether you were in the plane, at the hotel for 1 or 2 hours and preparing, but making sure you were staying up on what was going on both ends, right? Because that was the most important part of preparing for those games, which all officials should be doing at every level if they can. Uh, so there were a lot of. It wasn't really a challenge in the sense that you didn't feel like it was something you couldn't overcome, but there was an understanding of the magnitude of preparation that was required to do the right thing, and not just continue to take games because you were off a night. Um, and then, quite honestly, I think the two fed off of each other a good bit. There were a lot of benefits that you learn from working football because you don't have to blow your whistle and stop the play on every penalty in football. The game continues to play on. There's more space on the football field, so your periphery can expand an awful lot more on the football field. But then also when you went from the field to the court, the periphery, which was only maybe 54 feet now in a basketball space, seemed like a very condensed area. So I think certain things helped in both regards. And then, as you said, I was a downfield official when I got into the NFL. Plays with receivers and defensive backs mimicked a lot of shooters driving to the basket, right? Displacement, restriction, what level was enough to be the foul, and then letting athletes be athletes. And just quite honestly, I was digesting plays though 3, 4, 5 days every week, right? I mean, 1 or 2 hours at the end of every day and the start of everyone's entertainment of the evening. That's when you went out and practiced and honed your craft. So I really felt like staying that active and constantly making those decisions was a good practice for both.
And I love that because we always hear about the benefits of being a multi-sport athlete, but we don't talk enough about the benefits of really being a multi-sport official and how doing one can keep you fresh for the other and how just that practice of putting air in a whistle and seeing plays and seeing the speed of the athletes and all of those things that we just don't talk about that enough because you do have a lot of officials who specialize in one sport, just like you have athletes that do that. But loved your insight on how really one helped you with the other because I don't think we give enough credit to that for those officials who are doing multiple sports at any level. If it's a high school official that's doing three sports,
Yes.
or I mean, I think it's important, and I think it does it keeps you sharp for sure.
And I think it did, and I really think too. See, I learned to even appreciate sports of that I didn't work. Right, I would watch baseball umpires, and just was amazed at how they would rotate around the base based on where the ball was coming from. Right, but to get yourself in the proper position, 1, 2 seconds ahead of the play in a game, a second or two that you can win is eternity. It's eternity because you're so uber focused and just watching officials navigate that. I've watched so many hockey games live, which is when you really learn to appreciate hockey officials.
Oof.
Quite honestly, to me, Dana, hats off. No way could I couldn't skate alone. Skate backward, right? Wow. A lot of really great athletes are flying by you, and there's a puck in the air somewhere around here.
Somewhere.
Yeah, I felt like my sports were rather safe overall once I watched the hockey officials, but just the
Oof.
appreciation for that.
Yeah, hockey, I've mentioned on a number of shows. We had Terry Gregson on, talking about the athleticism of hockey officials. They're skating, they're sometimes having to jump over a puck and get out of the way of these giants who are on blades and have sticks. I mean, there's a lot that can happen in a hockey game, but I agree with you. Watching hockey officials live, wow, I always say wow. I think probably part of a job hazard for me is anytime I'm at a sporting event, I spend most of the time watching the officials and really watching those hockey officials. It's impressive because I can't ice skate, much less do all of that. So you're right. Hats off. I'm with you, Gene.
100%. 100%.
So it was unique, obviously, that you were a high level official as well as, in both sports, both basketball and football. And now you're doing something pretty unique, being an on air rules analyst for two sports. So, what do you see as the biggest challenges of serving as an on air rules analyst? And are those challenges different in football than in basketball?
Yeah, I think I'll go with the last first. There's some differences now that I've done this for some years. Um, in football, there's a rhythm to most of the times that I would go on air, right? It's a challenge by a coach or a replay stops. You have a space there. An official will announce to the public the ruling on the field is X. We're going to review that process. So you get some setup for you and some time. And then quite honestly, with the amazement of the way that CBS broadcasts basketball or any sporting event and how quickly the replays and angles come to feed you as someone that's working. That's a great luxury, and football does that. And in basketball, many times, they may just blow their whistle and they start walking to the table right after they meet very quickly on the court, and then they disperse. Hopefully, an official comes to the other side and lets the talent know that's working the game. We're looking at something or going to review this element. but there are other times when they just go to that table, right? So from my space, in my ear and that nice studio that they've built for me in New York, I'm having producers say, Gene, what are they looking at? Right. So in basketball, I find myself rather quickly when plays stop and there wasn't an explanation, rewinding very quickly the previous 6 or 7 seconds of the play. It may go back to the previous possession in case there was an elbow back there, right, that you didn't see, and then the ball became dead. So I do pan back 6 or 7 seconds, and I am refereeing everything that you could possibly cover on that court to try to find where that issue may be, because I want to not only inform the public, but get our team on board. This is what I believe they're looking at. And then the challenges from this sport, which I hope are, I know they're keeping me sharp in some regards. And that is, okay, now here's that play, right? And you've got about 15 seconds to dissect this play so that you feel comfortable about making, I hope, an educated opinion on the play and a ruling or a judgment. And then remembering, who the players are. If you can get the players' names, which we never were challenged with in sports, it was a number, right? And then truly, and quite honestly, during March's madness, what city am I in? What announcers are on that game? Because there are, maybe 6 or 7 games happening at the same time. So you've got to get all the television info done while you are viewing those 15 seconds of that play, and hopefully get all of that processed. And then I think for me, being overly talkative at times, it was, okay, we're going to bring you on air. And listen, can you please get this finished within a 10-second window, no more than that, and make it make sense so that we can get in and out. So there's a lot of moving parts, which honestly, Dana, was what was really so intriguing, I think, to me. I left, as you said, in 2018. I was 55 years old, which is a pretty good place to be as an official, right? If you stay, keep your body in good shape, you're blessed with good health. That 55 to 61, 62 window is usually the fruit of the labor at the end of what you hope is a really fun career. So I did leave that, and I went to something that I never did before. So the thing I stressed, I think, so much as an official is I was addicted to being in uncomfortable situations and putting myself there voluntarily and finding comfort in that area, which I think really, as I grew in officiating, I realized, why is it that you really do want to do this as much as you're doing it? It has to be for something. That was one of the key elements I realized that I kind of enjoyed. I thought it kept my level of awareness very high. It challenged me constantly to keep physically fit, mentally fit, eat right when you can't sleep the right way. Um, and this is doing that in a lot of ways. I don't have the travel as much. The physical demands aren't nearly as much. All those other elements, though, the processing
Oh my
is the
gosh.
same type of thing. So I really, and you never did it before. So when you start something fresh in your mid 50s, you're either completely crazy, which I think I would say I probably definitely am.
There might be a little bit of that.
I think a little bit of it. But then I think also, I know at least for me, it was like opportunities present themselves that are going to push you a little further than maybe you would have got pushed to just work the last, 6 or 7 years of your career. So that was exciting for me, and
Same.
now it's really been fun because you're learning the television aspect of a window you never thought you'd be involved in.
So it sounds like you really embrace the life motto of being comfortable with being uncomfortable, which I think I mean, that's really a life skill when you keep taking chances and you go outside of your comfort zone and you continue to thrive. And you're talking about March Madness. And I was thinking about, just as a fan of college basketball, when I'm sitting at home and you have a game that tips off at 7:02, 7:07, 7:18, 7:24, you've got all these games going on at the same time. And anytime they bring you on air, I'm like, how is he doing this? Because I just heard him on that other game that was 2 minutes ago. And I'm trying to picture it in my head, like, what's he doing right now? Because I don't know if my brain would probably just shut down. That's a lot of stimuli going on at the same time, but you're always Johnny on the spot with it. And it's just cool. It has to be kind of like a 4-ring circus at times when you're in the midst of all of that. So as you were talking through that, I was thinking about just the fan experience. And of course, I don't think a lot of people outside of officiating are really thinking that much about what you're doing, but I know I am. So,
Yeah. It's got that air traffic controller kind of feeling to it, I think. I never
oh, for
was in the
sure.
tower, but I always try to look and say, okay, what would this simulate? And that would be 8 runways, each with 2 or 3 planes on them. Know the names of all the pilots, know the airline that you're dealing with, right? Know what city they're flying to. So there was a little bridging in there, but I do think it is that repetition. Um, that ability to hopefully stay and multitask as well, because I think officiating carries a ton of multitasking in it. And honestly, Dana, like when I really started to again move through this, it were the other things that I had mentioned to you that I realized, you know what, staying healthy, taking care of yourself as much as you can, all of those things, having a relationship, uh, they all replicated what I did when I played, right? Because it was this, when we play and we're student athletes, uh, it's always like the game, the game, the game. That's a huge part of the process. But when you grow older and look back on what you did when you were an athlete, and 90+% of our athletes are done at high school, you realize, not only did I do that, I did my studies. I had a relationship, one of the first relationships. I was dealing with things at home. I had to work out. We had to eat properly. I had to sleep properly. So all of those types of things that I think benefited you or made you probably really like to be an athlete, plus the game, they continue to for officials. Officials get to live that life their entire duration of them officiating if they decide to embrace it the right way. And how cool could it be to live 50 years of your life and keep playing games? So
Pretty special.
I kind of went for it. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump into now the topic of the day and the letter Z and the word zebra. So, what did wearing the stripes as a basketball and football official mean to you, and how did it make you feel?
Um, it 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 was humbling because I really always felt like that jersey. I think all officials, the representation of what officiating kind of meant, and the stripes do mean that, especially in the sports I work. We wore stripes, and they were black and white. They were objective, fair, unbiased. There was an answer. You more than likely either did get it right or you did get it wrong, right? Um, so it did represent a lot of what the color or the striping meant to me personally. And I think it was also when you're an official, you love the game itself, and it's the tie that binds everybody that's in that game. They all have different paths to that and different things while we participate in the game. The teams naturally to win, but to learn lessons in life as teammates as they go through the process to win the games, the coaches to mold and mentor and get a group of individuals to learn all of those elements for the game and what the game serves. And then I think the gigantic responsibility that on evaluation day for the coaches, which were the game, a performance day for the athletes after all of that, uh, somebody had to oversee that. And somebody had to do that humbly, not only for the integrity of the game, they had to do it with the mission of, I'm going to perform on this platform in this stage. And my goal is to do this as objectively as possible and not be seen, which I really thought to me was something that was really, really cool about the fraternity. And that was the goal, was to remain anonymous, but understand a few times throughout that contest, you are going to be the focal point of this just because it is what it is. And decisions have to be made, right? And they become the center of attention. So the ability to get into that space, project the things that you would project football way in a much more production type of a way as a referee, by your posture, by your announcements, by your doing what you needed to do in that element, representing crews, because all the other 6 officials or 7 made calls but never got to tell anybody about them, as opposed to basketball. But it also was understanding what those 3 minutes meant in a 3-hour football game when you were on television, and what those little 8-second snippets did for the experience and for the representing of the game, right? And so there were big responsibilities in that. And that's what it reflected to me. And in this day and age and life where sometimes I think we just say things a little too fantastic just to see who else can be shocked into reading what we've tweeted or text or said
Oh, true.
for attention. Um, the lessons that started to bridge from officiating into life that were virtuous lessons became a much deeper reality to what that really represents. And, I could go on for a long time about that, but quite frankly, it's the truth, and, at the end of the day, we love being entertained by our athletes. It's a wonderful form of entertainment. But if you go back and talk to the Hall of Fame athletes, they'll tell you about 2 or 3 games that they played, but then they'll talk to you for a day or 2 about all the experiences and things that they learned along the way, and a lot of them don't have anything to do with the touchdown or the last second shot. They're these lessons that really are things that you hope to attain in life. So that is what it means to me. As I said, I could talk a long time. There's an awful lot of very important lessons to learn as a fan, as a player, as a coach, when you do see officials too, as a parent, right? When we are at our youth games and emotions get the better of us over those and pulling back and understanding, what are we really doing with them? And that's really what ref and it still means that to me. And I try to convey it as much as I can when anybody gives me chances like this.
That was a fantastic answer. And, officiating is so tricky because you do have to have that humility. You have to be humble. But then when it is that 3 minutes when you're administering a foul, you have to have that confidence. And there is that consistent just straddling that line of humility and confidence and not being cocky or arrogant. And it's a gift to be able to do that, and the good ones are able to do that to a degree where they're, the way they do things, they're credible, they're believable, the coaches and players trust them, but it's such a there's an art and a science to it, and I think that the good ones definitely know how to do that without coming across as, trying to be bigger than the game, because that's not what officials are there for. It's not their show, like, and trying to talk to high school officials about that sometimes, we're trying to get them to be confident, but also trying to make sure that they don't go overboard a little bit.
Yes,
It's tough, but it's experiential. You're not gonna get that necessarily your 10th game. By your 50th game, you might, but there's definitely an art and a science involved, and, it's a thing of beauty when you see officials that do it well.
I totally agree. And it was something, and to this day, even I still am a supervisor of officials of 3 small college conferences in football in these areas in the 4 states around Pennsylvania. Um, I am still learning every single day in this business. You continuously learn things ab about diffusing confrontation. I mean, just there are so many layers to this. Um, and it's such a cool thing whenever you have something, officials do it because they have a passion, right?
They do.
People say, "Oh my gosh, you must have made so much money." Quite honestly, by the time they started paying you a lot to do it, you were so far into this that the money was there at some point, and you hoped if you were a really good person that you paid it forward to all of those that stayed home all of those years while you were away and made their lifestyle a little better if it got to that point, or went on vacation with the money or helped with the college education or whatever that was. That was the goal on the finances. But you also realize that this fraternity that lives in that space, and as you said, understands those values of humility, and where does confidence stop and arrogance begin? How do I handle unfair and biased judgment of me when someone is 1000% wrong? I have a beautiful wife who has taught me how to do that because I've been wrong so many times, and listening to how empathetic she is with my ignorance is wonderful virtue for her. But there was a lot of that, and I think that's a lot of the sharing, quite frankly, for those that are just getting into officiating, the getting in the car with your partner
Oh
and
gosh.
driving the 30 minutes to the game, finding a common location to start meeting an individual, talking about what you're both going to do, and then those are the things you remember. And those are the things, quite honestly, that make you a better game manager. right? You can look at video all week, and we have great technology, and see plays and see what position I was in to make that play or miss that play or why did I do that or do that. But getting in a car with a veteran and saying, "Coach, this coach said this to me tonight," and having a veteran ask, "Well, how did you respond?" And now we role play while we drive down the road. Um, Now you learned how to manage a game.
Sure.
And most of that happens in that vehicle, right? Or when you're listening and paying attention there. So it just continued to pay forward, pay forward. And then you really realized that there was a lot of those things that you could do in your regular life that would make it a much smoother experience too, you know?
For sure, and you kinda started leading us to this question, and I didn't even tell you to, so that was good. But, you know that officials love to hear officiating stories, and you were talking a little bit just now about how, the memories about playing that generally isn't even about the touchdown or the game-winning field goal or whatever the case may be. So in your world, if you had to list your top 3 moments in your officiating career,
Hmm.
what would they be?
Oh my gosh.
It's story time, Gene.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Ah, as a lover of officiating, was seeing my dad at Penn State when Franco Harris and Lydell Mitchell were playing for Penn State and being a kid.
Oh my
Right,
gosh,
and
yes.
Penn State beating Pitt by 60, and I loved Pitt. My older brother, Tony, who was, an NFL back judge for 20 years and the president of the officiating union for a long period of time, and having him love Penn State, me love Pitt, but still watching dad on the sideline. Those collectively, there's a decade and a half of just 6 Army-Navy games and seeing what the Army-Navy game meant. Those are experiences that having my brother on my crew. My brother was my mentor in a lot of ways through life. He was 4 years older than me. My business partner, we have shared our lives together. But then to be told that, when Mike Pereira did call that to let me know that they'd like me to be a referee in the NFL, it's a very humbling feeling. There haven't been that many. If you really think about it in history, and then you think about the Jerry Mark Brights and the Jim Tunneys and the Red Cashins and the people in our world that were the Jordans or the Magic Johnsons,
Right.
right? Or the Tom Bradys or the whatever superstar it is that you lived in. Those were our childhood superstars. Uh, Mickey Crowley in college basketball. The list would go forever, right? But then to hear that they were going to give you an opportunity to be a referee in the NFL, and then in 2 sentences after that, them asking or letting you know that your brother is going to be on your crew. And we were the only brothers to work a regular season together, and we got to work 3 of them together. So
That's fan
those 3 years in totality, uh, anything beyond there really isn't anything that compares to that. It's kind of in its own category. And then, yes, there's a few games, right? I mean, there's gonna be a few games. And Super Bowls are wonderful because Super Bowls are times when you get to or Final Fours if you're lucky, or championships. If you never strive. That's not on your list. I don't think it's not wise to ever say, "I just got to this level of high school. My goal is to work the state championship, and if I don't make that, I have failed." It's an unfair thing to say. It shouldn't be a goal because there's variables. Things happen. So I don't know that that's a great thing to use as a plus or minus in the career. But if they occur, and when they occur, I think the beauty of those that was when you got to bring the crew with you. That's when mom, dad, wife, children, siblings, support people possibly, right? Mentors. When you got to then look and say, now I've had the opportunity because of this body of work to enjoy this atmosphere. And then you get to look back and see those that were home for so many nights. They handled so much pressure. It's so much harder to watch somebody ref than it is to ref, right? Just like all of our moms and dads or loved ones that watch someone play, it's 1,000 times harder to watch
sure
someone play,
is.
right? But then getting to that stage and being able to just let them know, you know, what level of appreciation and sacrifice that they made that no one else really does other than those of us that live it with ours. Those are the memories. Like those are the real collective memories. I remember overturning my brother for the first time in replay. So as a little side note, it was in Miami, right? He ruled a touchdown. Donald Driver didn't score. He thought he didn't score. I overturned him, which caused my mother tremendous anxiety. I remember getting the call from Mike Pereira. I hung up. I called mom and dad. Mom answers the phone. Wanted to tell her, speechless. Oh my God, honey, they're going to make you a referee in the NFL. Yes. I said, Mom, it gets better. How could it be better? I said, Mom, they're going to make Tony my back judge. And I think Tony just worked the Eagles Patriot Super Bowl in Jacksonville the year before. And as soon as I told her, I said, Mom, Tony's going to be the back judge on the crew. It was like I thought the phone disconnected. Then it was silent. And finally I pulled, the Mom, you there? Oh, yeah, honey, I'm here. I said, everything okay? Yeah. What if you have to overturn your brother? I said, Mom, after, going through my whole childhood where a brother 4 years older than you would have agitated you, rubbed your face in the dirt. What would make you think that I'd want to overturn him in front of 20 million people on TV? And he had never had a ruling that he ruled on a field that didn't, go to replay. So I did kind of hold that one in my card, and I did get him twice there those 3 years. Brett Favre, I think, thought we were going to fight in Miami when I overturned him the first time. I remember Tony yelling at me after I said it was a touchdown. And Favre looked, are you guys going to fight? I said, maybe, but I got to punch out for TV first, and it's going to be quick because we only have like 2 minutes to get it done. But so I do remember those times.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, there were definitely some of those.
Christmas was awkward that year.
Yeah,
Family Christmas was weird.
Exactly. Yeah, but he was really great about it. He really was, and he took me under his wing, and he taught me how to kind of be a referee too at that stage. He had been there before I got there, right? And you said another word as you were talking a little earlier, which is the word I think too, and that was the trust. It wasn't just the trust of the coaches trusting the refs enough, knowing you're going to miss a couple. It was your crewmates trusting you as well. And I think too, when we go through, when you go through season after season after season, and football was a beautiful thing because you had the same crew. So you did live with the other six in the NFL 7 officials total, but you did live 5 months of your life with them through a lot of pressure. But you also talked to them on a weekly basis, so you knew their families. Children were born, people became ill, people passed away through those years. So there was just so many more tentacles in the journeys. Just my gosh, Dan, we could do. You'd have to create more letters in the alphabet for
We
us.
can do that.
Is it Z1, Z2?
Subsections of Z, it's good.
Yeah, but thousands of memories for sure.
You were talking about that, how you spend 5 months out of the year with your officiating crew, and you mentioned Jerry Markbright earlier, who's a dear friend and who I still go up to Skokie and see him as often as I can. Moving to Indianapolis made that possible. And Jerry, you know how funny he is. He always tells the story of being the only Jewish member of his crew and going to all the Catholic masses. And he's just like, I think I was honorary Catholic by the time the season was over, because he said, that's what you did on the crew, is you went to church together. And he goes, and I went with him, and he's like, I didn't take them to synagogue, but I was certainly in church. And I was just thinking about how you end up sharing these life experiences with people for 5 months out of the year. You could order each other's food for each other if you needed to, because you're just always together. And that crew mentality, especially in football, is so prevalent. And your lives just overlap, and you're at each other's weddings and sicknesses and unfortunately funerals along the way. I mean, it's just, they're your people. And it's really a special thing. And we talk on this podcast all the time about that officiating family and how meaningful it is. And it really is, they're the backbone of a lot of our lives, as we've all come up through officiating in different ways. But certainly those are our people, and those are the family outside of our family who our families hear all about. I mean, they know about our crewmates and the people that we work with. It's just it's a really special world. So now I have a 2-part question for you. Officiating is not always an easy journey, so we're going to give some advice now. What advice can you give to officials about how to get through the challenges that go along with the role? And the second part of that, was there a particular time in your journey when you were struggling, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, you're always gonna have those ups and downs in scenarios, and I think when I would struggle, I don't know that it was like a pocket of time. I would struggle if I knew that I lost my focus during a contest, and then that lapse uh, created a situation that affected the game adversely. It may not be a game-changing play, as a matter of fact, I think as you climb the ladder, you become a little more focused and self-critical on even plays that no one really knows you missed, but you know you missed them, right? So, um, there was that as far as kinda like that challenging piece. And then listen, it doesn't always go it's not an easy journey for any of us that ever went through it. It's extremely difficult to be recognized in this business, to get the opportunity in this business, and then hopefully be in that right place at the right time, with that. And some of that piece is self-inflicted, I believe. And I think the lesson learned for any official is in a lot of times in officiating, once you start to referee and you think, I kind of really like this. And I think I'm working high school playoff games after my second or third year of refereeing varsity sports. And you know what? I want to get to that next level. And you go to a camp maybe, and they don't pick you that first year. And you start to doubt yourself. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought, or there's a political thing that you think is happening behind the scenes, or something negative starts to creep into it because we are creatures and we're not perfect. Sometimes some of those things may be validated. For the most part, they probably aren't, but those are pieces that you don't control again. So you focus on where you are. You work your hardest to become a specialist in that. Um, and quite honestly, Dana, when the beginning with me, what I thought was going to be a difficult, challenging part of this for me, actually became a huge part of what I embraced with that, and that was not being perfect, right? It kind of was going through that. Look, when you're an official, half of the gymnasium, half of the country, half of everything, if the room is divided in fans for either team, half of them aren't going to really like you on an impulsive situation almost all the time. So you deal with criticism. You're going to be evaluated by somebody as you climb. And evaluations aren't to give you 1,000 attaboys through the evaluation. You know, you get a couple, great call, good position. Then the rest of them are, take a look at this play. We need to get this play. So they were weighted a little, and not unfairly, toward maybe more constructive criticisms or scenarios where you weren't perfect. Um, I thought it was the embracing of the fact that you really were going to understand that for the most part, I wasn't going to be perfect. Uh, and then to be able to take a breath and say, and that's okay,
Right.
right? It was that breath after that to say that's okay to not be perfect. Uh, but and also to be in a productive way, I think your harshest critic. Um, and then that bridged into, I had a heated discussion with somebody in my life. Um, I could have reacted different. So I think I started to self-evaluate many more things as a result of officiating too. So and then the most important word I think of all officiating and my quite frankly in my life was empathy. And I think it
Mhm.
taught me that, not sympathy, but empathy, and making sure that I was very aware of the surroundings that were around me during the contest, the pressures that were there, and in preparation, making sure that you were respecting everything everyone was doing to get to that space, and navigating through the imperfection of it. Which was that's a hard thing to do, especially when the decision happens at the wrong time, right? And a game does get decided, which if any of us do this long enough, there will be those days. It was the getting through those following 2 or 3 days after that, uh, that you realize where your support mechanism is. And then you realize you got to get back on the horse and we got to go get it again, and that was a good thing, I think, in life.
That's such a great lesson. You're not going to be perfect, and that's okay, because I think that for officials, so many were athletes and are competitive, and you want to be the best. And giving yourself grace in those moments where you aren't perfect is so important because nothing about sport is perfect. The players are not, the coaches are not, and there is this expectation from everybody else that the officials will be, and it's
That's
ridiculous because they're human. And for those who want robot officials, guess what? Robot officials are still created by humans, so they're probably not going to be perfect either.
that.
So I think that, like you said, and I'm so glad you said it, you're not going to be perfect, and that's okay. And the more, if you're an official that's newer and you're listening to this, that is some of the best advice that you can hear because you're going to get criticized either by a fan in the stands who's yelling at you, an assessor or evaluator in the sport that you officiate, a coach, somebody is going to give you criticism or yell at you, depending on what kind of criticism. And you have to be okay with that. And there is a thick skin that develops over time that you probably won't have your first game out, but that advice is that's priceless. And there was a lot packed in that answer, but I think that it's so important that especially new officials understand that. And as veteran officials, just because you're a veteran doesn't mean that you've seen it all and you know it all. And being able to have, again, humility to know that you're not always right and you might also still make mistakes. You have to remember that throughout your career as well. So I think there was a lot in that answer, Gene, and I appreciate the advice for our listeners. That was good stuff.
Yeah, and I would say then if for the ones that are starting, the hardest crowd is the youth sports crowd.
Oh gosh,
Um,
yes.
those are parents or guardians that those are their children. They're not their 23-year-old son or daughter who's a junior in college who's been gone for 5 years. No, that's my little boy or little girl who is 11. And anything that happens to my 11-year-old that I don't like, that's where empathy comes into this game. I would look in the stands and see grandmothers. I used to work, well, I was a Roman Catholic, and it's funny you said that with Jerry. I think when Jerry would go with us to games and he would go to these Catholic churches all over the country, the priests all knew his name. I was kind of looking at him going, Jerry, how do you? Well, I've been coming to this church for the last 35 years, Gene. I mean, I might only come twice a year, but every time I come in, I sit at this pew and the
But he's
father.
Jerry.
Yeah, I said, I was amazed, but no, it was, you're so right. But I mean, that's when I started officiating too. I would go to 10:30 mass with the family. Peace be with you. We would shake hands. We would say the Our Father together. And an hour later, we were in the Catholic gymnasium, and the same people I was shaking hands with, my goodness, I called a travel on little Billy who walked 4 times before he dribbled. I had to finally say he was traveling. And I was like, don't you remember me? I was the guy upstairs an hour ago that we were just kumbaya.
We peace be with you. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened?
Exactly. But then I think the understanding of it. So I would look when the fans were yelling, and I would think, okay, why are you that emotional? Well, grandma drove 2 hours. This is the only game of the year she's going to see. She's got a right to yell at me. I was like, it's okay. I'll take it for you. I'm part of the team. So
But teach your kid how to dribble. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
yeah. Yeah, if I would have called every travel, I'd still be there. Yes.
You'd be in some gym somewhere officiating a 11-year-old basketball game. We'd never have this conversation. So, Gene, throughout your career, you've seen, I'm sure, a lot of changes within officiating. What are some of the most significant changes you've seen in terms of rules, mechanics, technology, and anything that you really feel like has kind of been earth shattering in the officiating industry?
Yeah, I think it's in the last 10 or 15 years, it's definitely replay, right? I mean, it's technology, it's cameras, it's HD. Uh, it's our striving as lovers of this game, all of us, the stakeholders of the games, to try to get the things that we can get right without, damaging the product too much. I think that's the largest change. I think the both sports that I work, I think basketball is still working hard to try to get there at the college level that I left in the college game. Uh, and that is they were more offense driven. It started to flow a little more to the offense, especially on the football side of it. Basketball has been really pushing as hard as they can for years now on freedom of movement, and let's try to make the game less physical. And that's not just to put it into the offensive bucket, but to allow the offenses to flow freely enough to let this graceful sport take place and not have it be kind of too much banging. Basketball's a hard one to do that with. The athletes continue to get bigger and the court gets smaller. And that's a hard sport to referee in the rules, by the way, we would like to see it flow all the time. So I think there's been a lot of offensive driven rule changes in some regard, which again, one thing about being an official, you love the game, and you follow rules very well. When they decide these are the rules, what good officials do and good supervisors do when they want to change something in the game. And I was part of a lot of those meetings throughout my career where we're going to implement this rule, and that supervisor of officials would say, okay, now can we officiate that play in real time at a high enough level of accuracy to implement the change? I always was intrigued by that as we moved through the safety aspect in football. I thought, those were things that now we're seeing. Basically, what's happening is, yes, do we want to get these hits out of the game? Yeah. Can we referee those hits in real time at the 90 plus percentile, like really quite honestly and humbly, like you guys referee most of the games? We do get 95% right. People would fight you if you said that or want to argue with you. But the truth of it is, the only thing we're yelling about are one or two plays. And I made 3,000 decisions tonight. So my accuracy is really, really
Very
high.
good.
Yeah. But then you do have these safety things with our increased knowledge and what's happening in certain games or certain basketball, football. Both of them have safety plays now that may not be plays that we can work 90+% efficient in real time because it's so fast. Great. Let's bring that technological device in. We do need to get it out of the game. We want to get it right. We just unfortunately are human and can't work to these specifics maybe at a high enough level. Great. Bring this in. And then let's get that in the game. That's our dance right now. And I think it's going to be a challenge as we go through it. I'm an advocate. I don't want to see the box behind home plate. I don't want to see that. I enjoy when a pitcher's breaking the breaking ball and it's touching a piece of the white and a little of the black, and it's a strike tonight, right? There's an art to this. So I don't want to see robots take this over. There's too much that officials bring that don't have a lot to do with whether they get the play calling is 25% of reffing. There's a whole other box here. So I think we have this challenge as a game. All the stakeholders do, officials definitely do and should weigh in. And that is how does technology intertwine with our growth to make the games better and to be more accurate as we become more particular on certain areas. And that's a shift we're living in real time. And we're on a place where if we add too much, the game slows down. We lose the essence of the rhythm. There's times when we get into March Madness where we stop the game 6 times in the last 15 seconds or 25, 40 seconds to go put a second on the clock, right? Or a 10th on the clock. And now this beautiful ending starts to get chopped. There's a dance here and we're learning it, right? So, but I think we're still living that, but that's the biggest change to me, without a doubt. Yeah.
Uh, Absolutely. I agree. And it is a dance, and it'll be interesting to see where we end up with it because it is still relatively new. So it's one of those things where it's imperfect just in its application at this point because of the newness. So we've got, we'll get there, but we'll see what happens in the next several years. So, Gene, on this show, we've talked a lot about remembering officials who have come before us and the importance of remembering our officiating roots. What are some of the things that current officials can do, as well as organizations and leagues, to honor former officials?
I think anytime, for me, I think officiating is you becoming someone who becomes interested at first. If you're really, really lucky, you join the local chapter in your community and you learn and you meet individuals in that community who have been there, who mentor, that live in your community. You start learning how to do this, or at least start to get a feel for it. Then you become an extremely active member of that fraternity. And then you start to become a mentor to that next generation that comes through. And then when you decide to hang the spikes up or the shirts up, um, for me, it wasn't a full circle yet. and supervising allowed me to be able to close that circle even as I ref. But then when I decided to retire, uh, the fraternity is a wonderful fraternity because it opens the doors for officials to give back constantly. And a lot of officials do choose to. Some choose to just walk, and God bless them for that. But I think as a fraternity, we should always open our doors to those that are done working. Uh, and even though maybe the game's changed a lot, they may have worked 50 years ago. There are so many things they can bring to you that aren't rules related. So I think we should do more of that. I would like to see, I think, some of our I wasn't one for awards or trophies or things of that nature personally, and most officials aren't. But I think a little more recognition on that stage, maybe from all of the stakeholders. There should be more than Art McNally in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Jim
100%.
Terry, Mark Bright. Those people lived in our living rooms for our lives, and they projected a game and were a very integral part of those games. I know it. I mean, I lived that. I would like to see some of that recognition. And maybe not just at the hall. I think, like, I do believe they should be in Hall of Fame, but even local areas, those recognitions to people that have done that. And it may be to officials that worked 25 years of their life and never went higher than middle school. They're precious people, and extremely important people in our community. So I think if we looked at that a little, I would like to see just maybe a little more.
Gosh, I love that answer, and that's something that I wholeheartedly agree. The fact that Jim Tunney and Jerry Markbright are not in the NFL Hall of Fame is a travesty. I will say that forever until they're enshrined. And at the local level, I agree because there are officials who have given so much, and really, I think that current officials may not even know that they're standing on the shoulders of those individuals, and it's so important if you're in an association, high school, college, it doesn't matter, and you know who those living legends are, bring them in, let them talk to them because they all have lessons to give, and they all, even if they don't know the current rules, man, you can learn a lot about game management and just experiences from them, and honor them, do something special for them. It doesn't take much, but it would mean a lot. And like you said, officials are not doing it for the accolades or the awards or a trophy or any of those things, but when they get it, it's super meaningful because officials live this life of anonymity, and sometimes the mark of success is people didn't know that you were there. It's the weirdest thing ever. The game doesn't happen without them, but nobody really knows who they were. It's very strange, but I
Yeah,
think the more that we can give a little bit of recognition to the people that we've learned so much from and that have really shaped us into who we are, that's big. And I love that answer, Gene.
yeah.
And kind of keep you along with that. So along those lines, and you've mentioned already, obviously your dad and your brother, but who were some other maybe of your officiating mentors? And are there any particular lessons that you learned from them
Mhm.
that then you passed on to your officiating mentees?
Yeah. Outside of the family, and as I said, Dad and Tony were, 1A, 1B, and uh, a gentleman by the name of Ed Manning, who was my dad's assistant as an assigner. He was an umpire in the Big Ten in football. Ed suffered a very difficult accident when arena football started, and hit his head on the field in Iowa and almost passed as a result of that action
Oh
in
my,
I think it was one of the first couple of years of arena football. But Ed he was also a small college basketball official. And throughout my small college basketball career, which is an extremely formative time if you end up and go through the process I did, uh, Ed was the basketball partner. We only worked two officials at that time that I met at the diner or at the coffee shop, and I drove every time we worked together. And I prayed that I had 20 games with Ed every year, and I brought cookies from home for him. And when we would get back to his car and there were 10 inches of snow in his car, he would go turn his car on and get back in my car and sit until his car got warm enough. It didn't matter that I had three little kids at home and I really wanted to go home. I was, he was my mentor, and he's who role played with me. He's who talked, and he used to tell me, Gene, I'm I'm on the downhill side of a mediocre career, he would say. It was so self-deprecating in basketball especially, but he made it fun. He made it a joy, and those nights can be long and difficult at times. And you look back, and those are the people that made these tremendous impacts. Jerry Mark Bright was with me in NFL Europe, and I can see Jerry. When we talk. I know I've said this to him 100 times. That was almost 30 years, 25 long years ago at least, and we were in NFL Europe, sitting in the park in Heidelberg, Germany, in the middle of the little old town square. Now, this is pre all of what our phone does, right? Like the cell phone was out. It wasn't ancient times, but the social and global interaction recognition had not taken place yet. And we would drive on those trains in Europe because we would be over there for 8 days together. And Jerry would sit next to me and tell me, you're so much better than I was. And I was terrible. I mean, that this was Jerry Markbright, but his level of humility and ability to just let you know it's going to be okay, kid. And I wish I was as good as you. While teaching the whole way. And we're sitting there in Heidelberg, and a family walks over in the middle of Germany and said, "Excuse me, are you Jerry Markbright?"
Oh my gosh.
Again, as you said, though, Dana, you're talking about anonymity. Jerry exemplifies that. Um, you would never. Jerry doesn't wear a bunch of hats that have all the conference names on it, or
You would have no idea.
you would have zero idea whatsoever. But in those 3 minutes, in those 10-second segments that he announced the penalty in the National Football League, and the way he handled himself and the way he handled players, you knew it was Jerry Markbright. And he never saw 1 second of that. The spotlight was coming, and what he did with it when it had to be on him was conveyed something that was so special. And just his ability to just be that kind of dad away from dad. Uh, you know, as I said, I talk a lot. He can leave me speechless, and just seeing that face constantly, and the effort and support and just constant positive attitude of a man in that place, and just to see that smile when they asked if that was Jerry Markbright, he kind of looked at them like, I don't know if I'm going to tell you or not, blew me away. And then 10 minutes later, he was talking about something that had absolutely nothing to do with it. Those are the things you look back on now, and you pinch yourself, because you never would have guessed it. If you'd have had 1/1000th of what you experienced, it would have been way more than you ever would have deserved, maybe. And then you got trainloads full of it, and a lot of them have Jerry's face on it. They really do.
Oh, Jerry, so anytime Jerry talks about you, so we go to this little diner in Skokie called Max and Benny's, and it's the only place we will eat. And, Ed and I will go, and he and Bobby and Ed and I'll have our breakfast, and of course, you're eating eggs with this legend, and I can't tell you how many times I'm like, "How is this happening?" Because I remember meeting Jerry in the year 2000, and I was starstruck. I couldn't talk to him. I was just like, I've emulated this man, like, he is a person I grew up idolizing in my living room while I was watching football with my dad, and there he is. And it took meeting Mike Pereira and talking to Mike with no problem, and Mike's like, "Well, just go talk to him, Dana," and I was like, "It's Jerry Markbright, I can't go talk to him, he's a legend." He's like,
Yeah.
"He's the nicest man ever." So he introduces us, I finally really get to know Jerry, and then we've developed this friendship, and,
Yeah.
he's been a mentor, he's been a dad away from dad as well, he's really our family up here, he and Bobby, and every time he talks about Eugene, I don't know if you know this, he always talks about how great of an official, and he wishes he could have been as good as you, but he always goes,
Thank you.
"You look at Gene and he's Adonis." He always calls you Adonis, and every time he gets these little stars in his eyes, and it's the most adorable thing, but he's just so like, he's so proud of you, and he talks about, Mike Carey and Ron Torbert and Carl Cheffers and a lot of the people that he worked with, and
Yeah.
he's so proud of those people who he invested time in, who still keep in touch with him and who care and love, care about him and love him so much. But he's like a proud dad. I mean, it's so cool hearing him talk about the people he mentored who are all like all-stars in their own right, you included. So it's just really it's so special to talk about, talk about all of that and hear his stories about Jim Tunney and Art McNally, and he's one of the godfathers. He really is. So,
Yes. Yeah.
but Adonis is what he calls you, sir, in case you didn't know
Well,
that. So
you can tell him when you see it first, hug Bobby, but then
I
look,
will.
Gene always thought you were a great game manager, but your eyesight wasn't the best.
I'll let him know.
What you might think was an Adonis. I don't know, Jerry. You might want to switch those bifocals, but
I don't know. He's gonna fight me on that. I know he's a stubborn man. I do know that about him. So, Gene, we're wrapping up. We have a final question for you, and this is something that we ask to all of our guests on the From A to Zebra podcast. So, we have a mission every week to educate, elevate, and excite our listeners. And you've already done a lot of this anyway. But what can you tell us about wearing the stripes and being a zebra that helps us to accomplish this mission?
I think anytime you can, again, it'd probably be a little summary of a few of the things. I think we all should in life and officiating, and the only way to really answer this, I think, is this answer has to serve both sides. The more things that you can learn in life from officiating, the more valuable officiating becomes for so many different levels. And I think there are just so many things to learn about yourself, to learn about situations and how to navigate situations that do cross over. I've said empathy a few times. Um, in order to be a true, in my humble opinion, great individual, you must be able to put yourself in another person's shoes to be able to have the conversation with that individual and to share a subject matter with that individual, because viewpoints will differ and should differ. Uh, but being able to see lenses and things from opposite lenses serves all of us better in life. The same applies in this game. You can't appreciate this game unless you have taken yourself 2 days before that game and understand that that basketball coach lives in that gym you're going to enter in 2 days and is working for the next 48 hours between games to find out what he or she needs to prepare for to beat an opponent who's a fierce rival, but just as good as they are. So this little window of understanding what they're doing, studying their style of play, their opponent's style of play, individual matchups in that game in order to do what's right for the game, also teaches you in life to look at all those different facets that may play and intertwine and come to a different kind of a common goal, just being a good human being, possibly, right? Um, so I do think officiating allows us this ability to go through those processes. Um, and I think when we do things and get into uncomfortable situations, officiating is a very uncomfortable place to be in. It's a very lonely, can be unbelievably suppressing. Uh, I don't care if you're in a high school gym or in the middle of the Super Bowl or Madison Square Garden. When you stop something and you're 1,000% wrong, and there's a lot on the line there because of the preparation and hard work everyone put into this, and a human reaction was false or wrong, and it adversely affected all of this, it's an extremely big feeling of uh, of responsibility and what each decision does mean. And I would tell you the exciting part of that is when you get into those spaces, all of your senses increase. The one thing that I have a cousin, Frank, who's now in his third year in the NFL and probably talk to him daily. Uh, it's one of the things I am stressing to him right now as he starts into this journey. I think be very aware of the elevation of your level of awareness that officiating challenges you to do or gives you the opportunity to do. Every sense that we have increases to such a high level because in order to function in that environment, you have to rise yourself to a certain level of awareness that, quite frankly, is very difficult to replicate once you quit doing it. I think it's why some athletes play longer than maybe their careers. It's probably because some officials stay longer too, right? Because I always knew, and that was what made leaving officiating and taking this new endeavor, it was the number one decision that was the one that I opined over, which was so difficult. And that was, once I say this is over, all of those hard nights in those gyms are ending. You're not going to do it again, right? That's it. So there's a level of getting in uncomfortable situations and becoming the most comfortable you are throughout the day because of it, because you've elevated yourself and focus, physicality, reaction, digesting things, processing things, and being fair while you did it. Is something that's really cool as a human being. And that can happen at a very small level, at a very low level of officiating. I think it's how we direct that energy that should excite you. And I think when we're empathetic in life, like I said, and you have to have empathy to do this business, or you'll end up in a place where you will have disdain, because people do act out of character a little bit because of the intensity levels. There's nothing like having an extremely difficult game, and you should always want the hardest game every night. That's got to be the goal, right? I don't care about the Super Bowl rings or the Final Four patches or whatever it is you're going to give me or watches. I really just want to work the hardest game. Where's the hardest game tonight? And that's the one I want to go in, because that's the one that's going to require me to work at this kind of, push myself to that place. There's something about that, I think, that makes us better people. And I think, again, when you want to get into that, you want to push yourself to a level to find out, is there a limit? People ask me my whole life, why did you choose to do like 75 basketball games in a full NFL schedule? There was a weird piece of me, I think, that wanted to do it because almost every human being I talked to said it was impossible to do that. And that was the worst thing you could have said to me, because now I am going to do it.
Right.
Have to do it now. Now you push me to where it's a have to now, and I'm gonna at least attempt it. So I think those are things that we should be excited about in life, and it's really wonderful in this world we live in, where now if we're on a different side of certain things, we're losing our empathetic feel for our opponents. Your opponent is supposed to be really, really great, because that's what's going to make you great, because you're going to have to be great to beat him or her. So I think we should look at that. And I think as a society, we need to focus on this right now. And I don't care what side of the owls you are, or what your ideological perspectives are, or what your feelings are. There's a beauty in being different. But at the end of the day, athletes, coaches, officials, they share the game. And at the end of life, sides of the aisle, different thoughts, different religious beliefs, different things, different looks, we all share humanity together, and we're all that. So there's that bond in there, right? And to me, those things should be, and we should celebrate those. And I think when you participate in the events and get a chance to run with the young kids and make mistakes and learn, if you can't get excited about that, then I don't know what to tell you, but you should be, because they're beautiful things in life, and sports brings that out in a lot of us. So that's what I would tell you to be excited about.
That's outstanding. Man, Gene Steratore, this was incredible. I can't thank you enough for your time this evening, and all the things that you've done. You were at our consortium for the NFHS a couple of years ago, and I can't express to you how much this means to have you closing out season 2 of the From A to Zebra podcast. You're such a great ambassador for officiating, and we're so glad that you spent some time with us and with our listeners. And you were right. It's been way too long since I had seen you. So it's great having the opportunity to visit. If nothing else, this podcast was a great opportunity for us to catch up. So that was great, but definitely hope to see you down the road here soon. And I wish you all the best this football season, going into basketball season with all the things that you do. Gene Steratore, wonderful closer to our season. And to our listeners, we want to say thank you for joining us on the From A to Zebra podcast for all of season 2. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and X for information about the show. Like, share, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And be on the lookout for information about season 3. Gene and I have about 12 sub-levels of the letter Z to talk about, so we might have to bring him back again. Thanks for joining us, and have a great off season until we see you again.
Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook, From A to Zebra podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.